The concept of freedom really comes down to being able to move further away from the things that are holding you back and move closer to the things that you ultimately want, to give you the space and the opportunity to actually enjoy more of the things that you want. Today, I'm going to talk about two very important factors that help law firm owners enjoy more freedom in their law firms. Now, one of the things that we really enjoy is freedom. And so many law firm owners want to enjoy more freedom in their firm, in their life, etc. But they may not necessarily be sure exactly how. So I am going to talk about two things that are very important to you being able to enjoy more freedom in your law firm. And this is a very timely topic because around this time of year in the US, in the month of July, we celebrate freedom a lot. And part of that is because July 4th signifies Independence Day here in the US. And if you ask a bunch of people, if you ask 10 people what freedom means, you're probably going to get different definitions or different specifics about what it means or how they feel about it. But when it comes down to it, one of the common things that you will hear people explain about the topic of freedom, whether that's in their life, in their business, on their job, whatever the case is, one of the things that you will see a common theme of it is the ability and the opportunity to get away from the things that they feel are holding them back. Now, when it comes down to the law firm and when it comes down to leading a law firm, there are many different things that law firm owners may feel that are holding them back. It may be the technology that you're using or the lack of technology in your firm, like having manual processes, maybe something that's holding you back from enjoying more freedom in your firm, or maybe it's having the wrong type of staff members, or maybe it's not having enough staff members, like not having the attorneys to free up your time to do other things, or not having the admin staff. And it could be even having clients who just aren't the right fit for your firm. Because when you have clients who just aren't the right fit, it does feel like a little bit of a drain where they're pulling time away from other valuable things that you could be doing. But instead, you're spending time doing these things that you'd rather not be doing. And when it comes down to how you figure out solutions for that, I have found after talking to hundreds of law firms and doing so much research, because we provide accounting and CFO services, building strategies for law firms, we found that there's two very consistent concepts that law firms who experience more freedom actually participate in and do more of, and it leads to more freedom. And then when we look at other firms who don't really practice these things as well, they're not enjoying as much freedom. Actually, their stress level is higher and their uncertainty about their business is a bit higher. To not belabor the point, here are the two. We'll start with the first one. So, the first one is having the right conversations. Now, when it comes down to having the right conversations in your law firm, it's not just about making sure you're talking about the right things. It really comes down to the right type of conversations allow you to focus your attention on the things that will actually lead you where you want to be. Think about it this way. Let's say the law firm that is struggling to find the right legal staff, they're struggling to find associates. If every time you talk to them, if the only thing they talk about is how hard it is to find attorneys to work in their firm, what I will tell you is if that is all they are focused on and they are constantly talking about that thing, they're probably not going to make progress in the direction that they need to go in. And so when you think about the right type of conversations, you do want to ask yourself is, as I think about the things that I talk about in my firm, do I spend more time talking about what are the problems, or am I starting to graduate through that process towards a solution? So here's something that I recommend that every law firm do is do not deny what the problems are. You can't just ignore them. We should acknowledge them. That should be part of the conversation. But the conversation shouldn't stop there. What we probably should do is identify what the problems are or what the pain points are. And then what we need to do is ask ourselves, what would a solution look like? What does fixing this problem, what could that look like? And then the next thing we want to talk about is, all right, what is our strategy to go about trying to move closer to that solution? And then the fourth part of the conversation is, how far have we moved today versus last week versus yesterday? See, when you are having those conversations like that, like you identify what the problem is, you identify what a potential solution is, you talk about a strategy, even if it's a general idea of what can get you closer to that solution. And then you regularly talk about how much progress have we made today, this week, this month, moving closer to our goal. What you will notice is the firms that do that consistently actually move in the direction of more and more freedom. And see, the thing is, a lot of law firms that I talk to are stuck at facing the challenges or the problems, or they don't feel like they're actually enjoying the type of freedom that they want in their firm. And to be honest with you, the things that you need to change to get there often are not that difficult or they're not that complicated. It really just comes down to making some of those small tweaks around what type of conversations are you having, because that is going to tell me a lot about what road are you headed down in your firm. Because again, if you go to a firm owner and you realize that they are constantly talking about the problem, it tells me that they haven't started moving down the road or down the path towards the solution yet, because they're still at the state of just focusing on the problem. So what you talk about, it makes a very big difference. Now, the second thing that really stands out, or a concept that law firms who enjoy more freedom, it is having access to the right data. Now, this one really closely ties back to, or feeds back into, the first part about the right conversations, because what the data does is the data helps us understand, okay, all right, what path are we headed down? Like, where are we going? How much progress have we made? What's going on? If you think about it like this, many people will tell you you need to know your KPIs or you need to know your numbers. And one of the things that I find is that a lot of law firms are just not sure, what does that really mean? Or what does that look like? And so the way I tend to break it down when it comes down to your KPIs, I say it is simply like this: your KPIs are the indicators or the flashing lights that tell you what direction you are headed in. So let's imagine you're going on a road trip. And let's say you are driving from Miami, Florida, and you are trying to get to Dallas, Texas. Even if you've never taken that road before, or you've never driven that trip before, by simply looking at a map, you can get an idea of the general direction. You know that, hey, Miami, Florida is in the southern part of the US, and Dallas, Texas is in the south, but in the middle of the country. So, you know, if you're leaving Miami, you probably have to head north and then head west until you get to Dallas. Now, the specifics of the roads that you need to take, that one we may have to use tools or use a map or use GPS to help us get there, but you have a good general idea. Now, if you're driving in your car and you see a sign that says New York City 100 miles, what you will know, even if you've never driven to Dallas before, it will be a glaring sign to you like, hey, something is off here. Even just looking at a map tells me I shouldn't be this close to New York if I am trying to get to Dallas. And that's what I think your KPIs are. They're those glaring lights that go off and that tell you, hey, are you headed in the right direction or not? Because if we go back to that example, let's say you're in the car and you're driving and you see a sign that says, hey, New Orleans, 100 miles from here. You're probably generally headed in the right direction, because you know that if you look at a map, At some point, you got to pass New Orleans to get to Texas, or you got to pass New Orleans to get in the direction of Dallas. Now, you may not be on the very precise road that you need to be on, but at least you know you're headed in the right direction. That KPI or that sign is going to be the indicator for you to then look a little closer at the specifics of the GPS or the map just to make sure, hey, now that I know that I'm getting closer to the right destination, now I probably need to look at a little bit more specific details. And that's the way you should think about your KPIs. When you are looking at your KPIs, they shouldn't just be numbers on a page, or they shouldn't just be numbers you talk about when you go to conferences, or numbers that you've heard somebody else talk about. What they should be is the things that help you understand, are you headed in the right direction? And this is why it is very important when you are identifying what are your KPIs, you want to make sure, are they the key performance indicators that are relevant to the goal that you are trying to achieve? And in order for you to know that, you first have to have a very clear picture of what are you trying to achieve? What is the goal that you are headed towards? And then what we need to do is figure out what KPIs are going to be relevant to help you get closer to that goal. Because when you have access to the right data and you're looking at those KPIs and you're asking yourself those questions is, hey, am I moving closer to my goal? Are things going in the right direction? What it then points you back to is having the right type of conversations. Now, let's talk about a very specific example. Let's say you hired an associate and you know you have a certain revenue goal for your firm. If we looked at the numbers and we said, all right, if your firm is going to achieve this revenue goal, that means by June, this associate needs to generate X amount of revenue for the firm because they are part of the overall strategy. Well, one of the things that we can do is we can say, all right, we know how much revenue this associate should have generated by June. Now, let's take a look and see, what did they actually generate as of the month of June? And by comparing those two numbers, we are going to get a really good KPI that tells us, is this associate headed in the right direction? Or do we need to have a different conversation? Because maybe I need to revisit and clarify with this associate what their target is. Maybe I need to understand, why are they either not hitting their target, or if they're exceeding their target, I need to understand, like, hey, what's going on, to figure out, hey, is there something I can do to support, or did we set the right target? What's going on? And the type of conversation you have is going to be the thing that allows your law firm to really move in the right direction. Because again, as we said, the concept of freedom really comes down to being able to move further away from the things that are holding you back and move closer to the things that you ultimately want, to give you the space and the opportunity to actually enjoy more of the things that you want. And the way that you get there when you are running a law firm is by having the right conversations. Are you talking about the right things? Because that tells me, what are you focused on? And then, are you monitoring, or do you have access to the right data? Because the data is going to be the objective signs that tell us if you're headed in the right direction. And if you have those two things, right conversations, right access to data, you dramatically increase your chances of enjoying more freedom and more success in your firm. Now, we run a bookkeeping and CFO firm, and we do data analytics. So the example that I am the most familiar with is when it comes down to data around the finances. So I'm going to break it down and give you a few practical things when I'm working with a law firm of, hey, here's some general guidelines on KPIs of things that I think that you probably should be really monitoring. Is, once we figured out what your goal is, whether that's a revenue goal, or maybe you come to me and you said, hey, Terrell, I just really want to be able to take 3 months off for vacation so that I can not have to worry about things in my firm. We'll probably end up doing the math and figuring out, okay, all right, what does the revenue and the income need to look like for your firm for you to be able to take 3 months off? Or let's say you want to get out of doing the legal work, or let's say you tell me that you want to retire soon. We're going to do the math and we're going to figure out, okay, all right, what do your numbers and your KPIs need to look like to support that goal? So here's a couple of things that we're going to look at is we're going to look at what is your average monthly revenue, because we want to understand how much money are you actually earning and bringing into the firm. The next thing we want to do is we want to look at your revenue by case type. Like, what types of legal cases are actually bringing the money in? And you'll be surprised. A lot of law firms that I talk to, they believe that one type of case really is like their go to or like the thing that they do a lot of. But when we look at the numbers, we realize like that's actually not the thing that people are willing to pay for the most. And then we start to look at things like, okay, what about uncollected bills? Like we look at invoices. These are clients that you have sent invoices to. How many of your clients have unpaid bills? And when we start to look at that for a lot of firms, what we realize is a lot of the goals that they want to achieve probably could be achieved a lot faster if we improved collection rates on some of the invoices that they're sending out. But if you're not looking at those numbers, you would never know that could be a really good opportunity to help you enjoy the goals that you want. Now, on the expense side, something we tend to look at is what are your average monthly expenses? I want to know how much money is going out the door to fund your business. And we can probably find some opportunities there or start asking ourselves, are we spending our money on the right things that are going to help us get to the goal that we ultimately want? Because when we start looking at where we're spending our money, we start to ask ourselves is, hey, is there something better we could be spending our money on? If we're looking at our marketing spend and we're saying, okay, how much money are you spending on marketing? How many clients is that generating? Is that the right number of clients? Or is that even a satisfactory kind of result? Is because if you're spending a ton of money on marketing, but it's not really generating the right volume of clients, then we probably either need to look at the marketing budget or maybe we need to look at the marketing strategy to figure out, is there a better way for you to use the money to help you get closer to your goals and your objectives? Now, there are a ton of other KPIs that you can probably look at and a ton of other data that will help support to make sure you're having the right conversation, in which we cover that in a lot of the other conversations that we're doing. Plus, we're working on coming up with a quarterly KPI, I would say, magazine where we talk about some of the key KPIs and some key objectives that firms are trying to achieve, what these KPIs mean, how you calculate them, and why they matter in your firm. So we're going to keep sharing even more because it is a lot. Now, if you're like, hey, I need some help now, we are a bookkeeping and CFO firm, and we also offer data analytics where we can analyze the data and provide you the KPIs that you need. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely click on the link below and you can set up a discovery call. But if you're really like, hey, I love the information, I love the insight, this is very helpful, make sure you subscribe to all the great content we're putting out because we're going to keep sharing more and more tips about these things to really help you as a law firm move towards the success and the freedom that you want to enjoy. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.